All right, the webinar is ready to begin with Janet Stilson, our contributing writer for TV News Check. Take it away, Janet.
Hi, everybody. I am really pleased to be moderating this session today. As we all know only too well, we're about half a year into when the COVID virus first touched shores in the United States, and we've had one heck of a twisty ride so far, which I think makes it the perfect time to check in with our panelists today to get their thoughts about what's happened so far and what they're expecting moving forward. I thought just to set the stage, I would offer up a couple of stats that I found to be quite interesting. Of course, there's lots and lots of other ones out there, but these are the ones that strike me the most. One is a forecast from BIA Advisory. They have downgraded how much revenue they think local TV will bring in this year to 18.4 billion. That's both digital as well as spot revenue. The other stat I read in the news the other day that has to do with Nielsen's measurement of the percentage of the population that tunes in at any point in the day to television. And it's now at roughly 20%, or it was for the week of June 1st, which is about at the pre-COVID level. But who knows what's going to happen moving forward. I think all bets are off. Before I introduce the panelists, I want to give you just sort of a lay of the land on how this is all going to work. I'm going to ask questions for about 40 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up to questions to you, which you can type in the Q&A box. I will not probably see them if you type them into chat, so be sure you hit the Q&A box when you type them in. I would suggest that you wait until about 35 minutes into the session before you start typing in case I happen to ask a question which you had in mind yourself. Also, you see that Kathy is going to be asking you some polling questions. A little polling window is going to pop up occasionally, and if you want to answer those questions, I think it should be interesting to see what all of you are thinking. So that's what's happening. So without further ado, here is our an intro to our esteemed panelists in alphabetical order. First, we have Frank Comerford, who's Chief Revenue Officer and President of Commercial Operations at NBC Universal-owned television stations. Kathy Doyle, who's Executive Vice President of Local Investment for IPG Magna. Mark Gorman, who's CEO of Matrix Solutions. Heather Gundry, who's Senior Vice President and Group Media Director at Dentsu Aegis. And Will Offerman is Chief Product Officer at Wide Orbit. So the first question that I'd like to ask all of you has to do with spot TV revenues. It was reportedly down by about 40% for the month of April, and I'm wondering if things have started to turn around. Let's first hear from our buyers, Heather and Kathy. Can you, from your perspective, are clients ready to invest more in spot at this point?
I think overall, our advertisers were right on target with that 40% as far as budgets were concerned. As we get more into third and fourth quarter, I think you'll start to see the advertisers come back, not to the extent that they were before. And I think that's based on a few reasons. Some of our clients, more retail in nature, are waiting for their stores to open up. Some of our automotives are waiting for the dealerships to open up for them to actually start coming back from a local standpoint. We do, however, have a couple of our clients that we've done a really big push to change their dollars, not only from national, but also from out of home and other avenues and into the local space. And that's because of how the markets are opening up one by one. And so we're keeping a close eye on that, and we're trying to bring some dollars from national into local because it does offer that benefit.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, very similar to what Heather just said. The one thing I would say might be a little different with some of our clients haven't really nailed down impact to budgets for this year based on COVID. I think we're still, we're still suffering a lot of the effects of that, and clients are still assessing what budgets look like for the year. So while we definitely have quite a few exploring you know, the benefits and flexibility of local as opposed to a national commitment. We haven't had a lock in on that yet, but we're hopeful.
Frank, what are you seeing?
Well, April was definitely a low point. May was much better than April, June better than May, and we're expecting third quarter to be better than even June. We've had double-digit growth from second quarter towards third as percentage of last year. It's been very uneven though, depending on, because we have English language, Spanish language, we have really big markets and then some medium-sized and smaller markets. And the recovery has been uneven depending on individual states, whether advertisers have stores, already mentioned, open and things like that. So it's been, everyone has been better, but it's not been consistent across the board.
Right. Will and Mark, can you give us your perspective? Are you seeing any insights in what your systems are providing you?
So
well, go ahead, Will.
At Wide Orbit, we actually built a COVID-19 impact analysis dashboard in our analytics tool. And we did that so we could isolate pacing data by product category, because we definitely needed to exclude the increase in political spending. And so while, as Frank said, Q3 and Q4 are down, they don't look as far down as they were in Q2. And the one product category that has a slight uptick right now is telecommunication spending. But everything else, all the retail, foods, automotive, entertainment, they're all still down. That's what we're seeing from our dashboards.
Okay.
So what's interesting, so I went back and we pulled the revenue data out of our system, and then I would say 98% of our clients use us as their forecasting tool for advertising revenue. And of course we break it apart, not just by category, but what they're selling, whether it's their, television, which properties, their digital O&Os, et cetera. So looking at it, I would say what Frank says from a standpoint, you could see the same thing across our broadcasting client base, that there's a real difference in performance, even among people you would think are apples to apples. So, but on average, certainly May was better than April, June significantly better, and then we looked at June this year, looking at what's coming in for the next couple of weeks too, compared to June last year. And on average, our client base is up 10% from June last year. So when we had talked to a lot of people back in April, a lot of the feedback was, we're not getting outright cancellations, but we're getting the postponement of advertising spend. And so then when we looked underneath, those groups that actually could translate some of that television buy that wasn't happening into more digital buy, which some people were able to do, those groups did the best.
Interesting. And the 10% figure, that includes political as well as the core category?
It does. I didn't strip out political, and political certainly has helped, right? No doubt about it. And the groups that have done better, political, of course, has been a bigger component. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to go back to our buyers, Kathy and Heather, and ask the next question, which is, what's your outlook for spot TV revenue for the last 2 quarters of the year, and then your outlook for 2021? Is there a way for you to put it in percentage terms?
Yeah, I think for us, from a Magna perspective, we're looking at probably about a +8 for second half, and that obviously includes political. Thank goodness for political. I never thought I'd be saying that. And then as we go into 2021, we're projecting a -15. And that's
-15. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you're making, when you say the last half, you're comparing 2019 versus 2020. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Heather, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I would say similar to Kathy. For third and fourth quarter, we're projecting a +2, but that's without political included in that, because we all know what's happening with political and it being the highest it's ever been. So I don't know how much that will change our projection. And then as far as 2021, we're more in line with what Kathy had said as well. We're about 10% down.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about categories. Let's start, hang on just a moment. I lost my place in my notes here. Can you tell us, Frank, first, what categories are showing the most strength?
Well, obviously political has been strong and stronger than even we expected, which we thought would be great. And the categories like legal, insurance, healthcare, things like that have been pretty good. Automotive hasn't fully come back, but it's starting to build back to where we expected it to be. You know, we're coming off a couple of years of very big auto numbers, and there was going to be a little bit of a flattening out of that uptick. There's a couple of categories that are not coming back yet: travel, tourism, entertainment. All those categories have been, besides retail, have been impacted, and we're still waiting for a full recovery. Even we owned parks, and the parks are not even open yet. They're opening, but so they're not spending money. Movies aren't in movie theaters. They're not spending money. Markets like New York, Broadway is a huge advertiser, and they're not going to be back until March of next year. So there's certain categories that are not coming back as quickly, but some other categories and some of the autos are back full blast right now.
Do you think that the fact that the politicians, many of them, choose not to hold live events, is that helping your revenue, your political revenue in any way?
I don't know. The live, they can only be one place at a time. The political is so polarized right now in this country, and there are even local races in New York, congressional races, which typically would not be able to buy New York City, we're buying New York City. So we've seen the political coming back for other reasons. I think it's really the two distinct points of view fighting it out. I don't know if it's not having live events or not.
Okay.
I can't judge that.
Okay. Kathy and Heather, give us your perspective on the categories. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I was going to mention this as Frank was talking. One of the things that we're seeing is so many of the categories can't open right now. And that's not just because their markets are closed, but more in line with some of the fast food and some of the restaurants. They're only at 50% capacity right now. They don't need any more customers to come in their doors. They can't manage it. So they're taking the stance that we don't need to advertise at this time. Let's save those dollars when we are open to full capacity, and then we'll spend the dollars that way. The same as with automotive. I mean, production is not up to full par yet. So they're not producing as many vehicles. So they don't have as many on their lots. So of course that affects the budgets that we're spending in advertising. So I think we'll get there closer to fourth quarter and closer to 2021. But just right now, from a category standpoint, I think that we're going to be slow to get there.
The one I might add is pharma. We're seeing that staying quite strong and slightly up, but very aligned with what Heather said about QSR. If you can only do delivery and drive-through and your business is doing great, it's again, saving that money for when you might need it later in the year as things reopen is probably a good strategy. And very aligned to that is similarly in the grocery category. People are cooking more at home. Grocery business has probably never been better, but it's again that, do I really need to be out there with a message right now if business is so great and strong while people are staying at home? So
yeah, I'm wondering if the ANA's called to permanently delay the upfronts and switch to a calendar year buying. Is there any after effect for, or any side effect for the spot marketplace? Any correlation in terms of increased buying or different patterns? Maybe Frank, can you take it first? That question from yourself.
Well, I was hoping that would happen. So it hasn't really happened a lot at this point. I think people are still working on their plans, and the scattered nature of the upfront right now. Some people are ready to do an upfront. Some people have already moved to calendar year point of view. There may be third and fourth quarter buys that typically would go on a national basis, but I haven't seen a ton of it yet.
Okay. Kathy and Heather?
Yeah, I would say at Magna, we've actually been a leader in the calendar year upfront since 2007. So it's really not new news to us. I think we're well positioned from this standpoint. It's nice to have more alignment of budget. You know, when you're going to allocate, maybe Spot will see a little pickup from that, we hope, but nothing so far, nothing new for us.
Yeah, I would agree with Kathy. We've been doing the upfronts for a while. We've been doing the annual buying cycles. I think moving forward in 2021, we may rethink that a little bit and maybe do it on a quarterly basis versus doing the entire year. So I think that's something that we're looking at from a strategic standpoint and what those benefits would be if we did do that.
Yeah. I want to get into some questions related to performance-based campaigns, and we have some poll results. I guess, Kathy, is the poll finished now, or should I wait a bit? She may be doing something else.
Still going, Janet. So
it's still going. Okay.
A minute.
All right. So anyway, let me just ask you, Heather and Kathy, we hear that stations are doing more performance-based deals. What are you seeing from your standpoint? How much of your spot deals involve performance-based transactions?
I'll go first, I guess. So we've been testing this and have been rolling out a really successful pay-for-performance model for over a year. We have quite a few partners where we're doing it. Our target for this year is to have 40 to 50% of our local video business conducted on the pay-for-performance model by the end of the year, hopefully. It's a bit of an aggressive target, but it seems to be really what we wanted it to be was a win-win-win for sales side, agencies, and most importantly for our clients to ensure they're getting what they pay for. Anybody that's worked in local for any amount of time knows how much time we spend chasing past under delivery weight. It can go on for months and months, or in some cases years. And it really is a losing proposition, I think, for the sell side and the buy side. So coming up with a model, our focus was really delivering the impressions within that campaign and doing CPM credits for what it didn't deliver, if it didn't deliver. It's been a huge success. We're really happy with it, and the feedback we've had from the sales side has been similar. They're happy with it. So.
And the 40%, how does that compare with last year? Is that a big jump?
I think it's a pretty big jump. I think we were at about 17% in 2019, and we started testing it in fourth quarter of 2018, I believe. So
how about you, Heather?
Making good progress.
Yeah, we're exactly like Kathy. We started testing it in fourth quarter of 2018 and went live in 2019 with a number of different media partners. Like Kathy, I'm very passionate about the whole concept of it. I think it makes perfect sense. I think it took us a while to get there, but I do feel that we're finally there. Our clients are thrilled with it. We've gotten majority of our clients to sign on and see the benefits from that. And we've had numerous discussions with all of our partners, and we've actually built some really good terms and conditions moving forward. So it has worked very well. We're doing the credits where we need to do the credits on a cost per point factor. More importantly, we're getting them to deliver within the flight of the campaign. It's very frustrating when you do have to get under delivery weight 6 months after a campaign has run, because it doesn't really hit the communication goals of the time. So now that we're doing pay for performance, it's really changed our entire strategy for our local standpoint. And it's actually put more dollars into the local atmosphere than it has into some of our digital partners. So that's been very positive for us.
Oh, that's very interesting. So we have some poll results. I got to put my glasses on to read it. So for the question, approximately what percentage of the campaigns you've bought or sold this year have been performance-based? And the let's see, 59% said that it fell into the, am I reading this right, Kathy? That,
Yes.
okay, so 59% of the people who took part in the poll said that it was between 29 and 49%. Is that the way it goes, Kathy?
It looks like 59% of the people who responded are doing 25% of their campaigns.
Okay, okay.
Gotcha. And then it goes downhill from there. And then you can see in the 2021, 53% anticipate that 50% of their campaigns will be performance-based. That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, that's great. Very cool. Well, so are there glitches in the performance-based campaigns? Kathy and Heather, what are you seeing on that front?
I actually don't see any glitches at this point. I think what we do have is additional partners that want to be part of the overall pay for performance model. And there's there's more discussions going on right now for partners that want to step up to doing this pay for performance. Other than that, I don't see any glitches that we're up against right now. Kathy, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's so much as a glitch, but, and I apologize, there's apparently a fan boat behind me right now making a lot of noise, sorry. The one thing I would say is there is a bit of a learning curve for both the buy and the sell side. And it's probably a little bit, you know, if I'm being honest, a little bit more challenging on the sell side. I think, you know, people are committed to it, they get it, they've embraced it, it's been great. And I do think too, there's a lot more potential and opportunity as we move forward with an audience-based buying currency and into that world. This sets us up really nicely, but there is a bit of a learning curve, I would say, for both sides.
Frank, please tell us what you're seeing.
I think it's great for us. Once that we get people moving towards impressions, not rating points, we're able to utilize our inventory much more efficiently. And I think that we had to get some of the sellers at individual locations wrap their head around the, well, we guarantee it, but we don't, it's an endeavor. I said, you're driving money out of the marketplace. You actually do wind up paying people back. And it's just, you can't predict when. If we can manage a schedule and provide the advertiser and the agency with what they bought, we can control our inventory and we can satisfy our clients. So it's a win for us without a doubt. When it seems like some of the people at first said, oh my goodness, don't do that. We've never had to do that. Well, things have changed.
Right.
I think it's awesome. And I would love to do it everywhere.
What percentage of your deals are performance-based at this point, would you say?
I can't tell you. There's only a few agencies that have really embraced it. But anybody who wants to try it, we're willing to try it. And, you know, as long as you make good business decisions prior to going into the agreement, you talk about a realistic approach. You know, the old days of getting somebody to overestimate your programming and walking away doesn't really help anybody. While at times it helps an individual seller because that salesperson gets paid for it, unless they don't get paid for it later on. So it makes us much smarter about our customers' performance on a deal. I can't give you a percentage because I don't really know, but I would do 100% if I could.
Right, right.
Except for very small exceptions on things like, you know, somebody's got to be on just these 3 days. There's nothing you can do about it. And that won't always work. But anybody who's got a real planned campaign, this is the way to transact business.
What are you seeing, Mark?
So I'd actually like to ask a follow-up question. So from my perspective, I fully agree for the sell side. This is a great trend. Not all the underlying mechanisms are there, of course, to be like digital in the sense with dynamic ad insertion and measuring that and embedded technology in the advertising, et cetera. But this is a great step. My follow-up question, though, is this: from the standpoint of the buy side, when you think about moving to more of an impression-based system, et cetera, are you also looking from a marketing perspective, moving less and less about branding and much more to call to action? Because impression-based buying is really more about call to action than it is about branding.
So Kathy, I'll step in, and then if you want to.
Yep, go ahead.
We already, and Kathy I know is the same way, are based on impressions and have been for quite some time. We're moving more into data-driven campaigns. So we're looking more in line with hitting the right consumer. Doing it on a pay-per-performance won't change that. We're still going to look for that correct consumer that's in the market for any one of our products. And on top of that, make sure that they're delivering within the time frame of the campaign. So I know someone had also asked a question on the question and answer about Nielsen methodology and if that's changing or making it more difficult for us to do pay-per-performance. It's actually not. I mean, we monitor every single week, if not every single day, to see where we're delivering for every single campaign. So the onus is both on the seller side and the buyer side, and there is that partnership where we all want to deliver at the end of the campaign. So if there is a falter in ratings and we see a downtrend, we make adjustments right then, just like you would do in the stance of digital, but we're just doing it now for television and linear.
Okay, so I'm taking it from what you've said, Heather and Kathy, that all of your transactions are based on impressions. Is that correct?
It is for us.
Okay.
Yeah, since 2016.
Okay, great. So we have the poll results for the question about impressions. Kathy, would you like to interpret them for us?
I would be happy to. We had more people voting this time. 49% of those voting are doing 25% of their transactions on impressions. 13% are doing 100%. Those must work for Magna.
Heather and I.
And Sue. And 23% do 50%, 18% do 75%. Next year, 32% anticipate that 75% of their transactions will be on impressions next year. So impressions is gaining. I'm not sure if it's gaining as much as the performance-based, but it's gaining. So there you go.
Right, right. Okay, so let's move on to make goods. No, actually, I want to ask Frank about the percentage of your transactions that are based on impressions. What are you seeing right now?
I don't think it's more than 25%, probably less.
Has that increased over last year?
Yes. We've only started doing it a little more than a year, I think. We've been pushing very hard across all our businesses to move to impressions and to move to these kind of performance models. Attribution models are another way that we're trying to move the measurement of our schedules, but we need to really provide people with what they're buying. We would never buy a car and only get 3 wheels.
Right. Okay, all right. So let's discuss make goods. I know that it's been kind of a big complicating factor for spot TV buying and selling over the years. I'm just wondering if the impressions-based selling and performance-based campaigns are cutting down on the discrepancies in the excess busy work. Kathy and Heather, do you want to start out and give us your perspective, and then I'd like to move and get Mark's opinion as well.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think impression-based makes a lot of difference in this space, at least not in its current iteration, but automation and pay for performance have a huge impact on the amount of make goods we're processing and how we're processing them. So you know, if you're on a system that can automate and create rules-based acceptance or decline of a proposed make good, that takes it off the associate's desk and the buyer's desk, and the system can just process it one way or the other. That's a huge help. And then as far as pay for performance, we already talked about it, but mitigating the time we spend chasing AUD weight from previous quarters is huge. So, and that's all lower value work, and frees our people up to be more strategic or negotiate another round and use that time in a way that's a lot more beneficial to our clients. So we're definitely seeing it start to tick down the time we spend on that, for sure.
Cool.
Which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I verbatim everything Kathy just said. That's how we feel about make goods. The impressions doesn't make a difference to us as far as the quantity of make goods. It's all about the fact that we're using automated systems and the guidelines that we set up for paid for performance, and putting more ownership on the stations to do the make goods as they feel would make the most sense for the client, rather than having the buyers make those decisions at the end of the day.
So I'll just say from my perspective, like, so we represent primarily the sell side. And so on the sell side, certainly over time, the traditional make good, and, you know, will, and this is my opinion, of course, will go away. So you'll be an impression based, you'll still be selling some spot, but that spot is, you know, of course, events, live events. And listen, if I'm buying a spot on, you know, March Madness, the Final Four, I'm not going to be real happy if you move that to the midnight movie with Elvira. So for me, you either give me that spot or don't. There's no real make good. And then on the impression side, from the video space, of course, to Frank's point, you can manage your inventory. So if I put you on X show at that time and I'm actually getting real data like you would in a digital space, you're going to be delivering via an ad server. You'll be able to count, the buy side will be able to have embedded technology. There'll be some sort of reconciliation, but this can be automated. And then you layer that on top for broadcasters who are selling multiple types of inventory. So I'm selling you live, I'm selling you OTT, I'm selling you my digital O&Os, extensions, etc. I do believe there'll be a point in time when there'll be some room to do make good across properties, even media types via certain equations. So I meet 95% of my live TV. Okay, maybe that's maybe 98%. Maybe I can make that up by giving you another 30% on digital or something like that.
Frank, what do you think about what they've said? Do you agree with them?
I do. I think some of it we're doing already. We want to sell our portfolio as a whole. So long as the impressions are measured the same, I mean, one of the problems over the years are what television was held to and what digital was held to, and an impression were two different things. But as the video starts to merge, whether it be linear or non-linear, it should be the same. And in some of our big events, we do make provision for make goods on other platforms if you have shortfall on your typical television. So,
Mark, I wanted to ask you if in your system, in the matrix system, are there certain insights that are surfacing about spot TV buyer needs or sales opportunities that suggest new ways of cross-selling and upselling?
Well, so I think of it more when I look through what occurred, you know, during the downfall in some of this advertising over the past, 3 or 4 months. We did see those clients who did the best. They really were able to do, I would say, 2 things. One, they were able to convert some of the postponed or canceled TV buying into their digital properties. And secondly, we also see that people who were in smaller markets, at least across our client base, did much better on local advertising. And yep, you're not going to have the restaurants, et cetera, but there are still things that we need. I think, for example, I'm sitting here today and my air conditioning's broken. So it's about 100 degrees in this house.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm not going to wait. So, and I don't have a regular air guy, so, or, you know, woman. So I just have to, you know, do a Google search. And so we see on both those items, smaller markets, local advertising did way better than it did on the national side and in bigger markets, and then being able to convert into the digital space.
Yeah,
Well,
I
Mark,
would say something about that. Even bigger markets that typically Washington, D.C., we're starting to see a lot more local advertisers who typically couldn't get on the air or didn't, that weren't being covered. They're starting to compete for time. And it's just for the reasons you outlined for smaller markets. It doesn't have to be a small town.
Right.
Right, right. And Mark, I invite you to take your jacket off if it's 100 degrees in your house.
Oh yeah, I'm burning up.
All right. So Will, I have a question for you, which is how is your automated business at Wide Orbit doing during the crisis? Are you finding that it's being used more than it was before? Is there any change at all?
So I want to start with that we're trying to take a holistic approach to helping improve the buying and selling of TV ad inventory. That's from the pre-buy, the order maintenance stewardship, the payment processing, sort of from the front to the collections piece. We released a payments portal that's useful for both ACH and credit card payments, and that's actually being quite well received across the customer base. So you don't have to worry about sending in checks or other things. We've been working with quite a few partners on electronic copy instructions. So that's basically not having to rekey in those copy instructions, an automatic ingest of the creative materials into the traffic system as well. And there's quite a bit of a push for those types of things. This might seem really simple, but there's this tip compliant airtimes API. There's a huge amount of demand. It was very challenging to get airtimes over to the buy side. And it's not going all the way upstream into the avail request response negotiation, but these little tiny pieces of chafe make this whole ecosystem difficult. Make goods may eventually go away. Right now, we've built in make good suggestion tools into our seller console. So the people that are actually having to offer it up can get the same sort of day part mix, impression goals, and find open inventory to offer that up so that a human doesn't have to do that. And of course, we've been doing a ton of work in the pre-buy, working with Hudson MX and Mediaocean and others to make sure that we can quickly surface up the available responses, get the inventory availability, et cetera. That's all in sort of the traditional workflows. There is this marketplace tool that we have. That's primarily, and I think it's been adopted fairly well, but it's more on the remnant side of the world. So it's also had an uptick, but I would suggest that holistically, we're trying to get it from soup to nuts. Let's make this whole process better. Let's help build the tools for this paid for performance, and let's just make sure that the entire ecosystem works. And this COVID-19 has actually in some ways helped. People have had more time to go through tests, to experiment in some other areas. So thank you.
I'm going to wait to have Kathy talk about the latest poll results until after the following question, which has to do with the I'll say demise. That's not really quite the right word. Video is no longer in the business. How has that affected or has there been any effect on the whole automated process and business because of the having that system out of the marketplace? I'm wondering, I know several of you probably have an opinion about this. I thought maybe we could hear from Kathy first. Are you seeing any difference?
For us, it's really no change. We definitely tested video in its, early days, but we were not dependent upon them when they came to their demise. So no impact for us.
Okay. Heather?
We used video a little bit in the past. However, we weren't fully invested in the whole thing. We were more in line with Hudson. So we haven't seen a change in anything.
Okay. Will?
I think video was working very diligently to try to improve the buying and selling. They were filling a niche in mostly rep-based workflows that sort of enabled stations to offer up those make goods a little bit faster. I think they added some value, but I don't think this business is complex and hard. I don't think they added enough value to this ecosystem.
Mark, what's your opinion?
So I would say, I would add on to what Will's saying, right? So I would agree fully with what he's saying. I think the other problem for them, one was probably their affiliation made a lot of broadcasters maybe more nervous about getting, well, for lack of a better word, getting into bed with them. But I also think letting them sort of die the way they did is maybe not great, not in the sense that their technology was perfect or, to Will's point, but it is, I will say, from a software side, sometimes it's hard because you need your clients to really be embedded in a partnership to be able to build those solutions that are, 1, 2, 3 years out. And in this automation from the sell side, only really one group has fully stepped up, and I will say that's the Comcast family of companies. So NBC, Sky, with what they're doing with Operative on that front. Now, I will say we have seen a change in the last 6 months, and we do have 2 clients that have become much more embedded with us in starting to build out additional workflow automation in the space. So we're seeing a positive change, but I do think there was a message sent with Vidya, build at your own risk.
What do you think, Frank?
Well, Vidya didn't affect us because we didn't use them.
Okay.
But, we have our own in-house rep firm. We don't even use a rep firm anymore. We've actually put all ourselves together. We have a different model right now. And I couldn't agree more with the statement that we want an end-to-end process. We've been talking about that for a while. That is the holy grail. There are still parts of our business using 45-year-old software in a time when 4-month-old software can be outdated. So we are trying. I commend any of the software providers who continue to work with us and on their own to improve these systems, and we are very, very interested in it. I don't need non-value added work for my highly paid people. I'd rather them go out doing things, making customer satisfaction calls, really executing on what we've negotiated and continuing to work with advertisers to help support their needs and not wasting time on non-value added work. So please keep working. And the fact that Vidya is out of business, one of the problems is that each agency tends to have their own goals, and we can't buy 5 systems. I can't have, this system for this group of agencies and this system for this holding company. So the tip compliant issue becomes very important for us so that we can build to a common standard. So if one agency wants to use a front end that they particularly like, we can work with them as long as our software providers continue to work towards that integration. And it's really the only way this is going to work.
Right.
Hey, look at both hands went up.
I know. Well,
Let's give Will a chance first.
I wanted to point out that the O&Os and the self-reps, they had the tool sets already within the WiderWeb product line. So our Order Connect was already supporting DARE in ePort and doing that whole 2-way back and forth. It was for everyone that had a rep in front of them where they were basically sending a one-way EC. This is way in the weeds, that it was an incredibly difficult workflow to handle all that make-good process. So Vidya was adding some value when you were not self-repped. But again, this is a very big ecosystem. You have to look at it holistically to solve some of the challenges that are here. And go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to just add to 2 things onto what Frank said that I wholeheartedly agree with. One, we have been We have fully committed to TIP as an organization. So every API we built over the past year has been TIP compliant. And why, listen, a lot of people may say they don't care, sell side, other software vendors. We do think it's important that there's a developed standard so that the different software vendors can more easily talk to one another. And frankly, on the buy side, it is less complicated, though maybe some people will say, no, you're wrong, less complicated than than the sales stack on the sell side. The second is, he's 100% right. There is a lot of busy work, and even spending time in systems takes time unless that system is providing actionable intelligence for the salesperson. They really need to be selling. So automating the workflow from actually the sales side is something that we think makes a lot of sense. And, certainly why we've spent time doing a lot of automation for national sales team and networks so that they don't have to change any of their behavior. Our system actually does and pulls from the other systems and automates that forecasting. So I think it's dead on. They need to be out selling, not working in systems, especially old ones.
I'm gonna let Kathy give us the poll results on automation, and then we'll go right into the Q&A questions.
Okay, so 60% of our respondents are using automation for 5% of their transactions this year. 12% are using it for more than 50%. That could be on the buy side too, because we're doing buy and sell side. And then for 2021, 28% anticipate that 5% of their transactions will be automated next year, and 35% anticipate 10% of their transactions will be automated next year. Only 12% anticipate 75%. So still kind of slow, but at least there's adoption.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions, several of them from Frank Friedman, whom I'm sure you all know. Frank is asking, first of all, how does the impending currency changes with Nielsen affecting plans for 2021? When the VBOs spill into the sample next year, ratings will drop by 20 to 25%. Impressions will also be lower in many markets. How are you managing that from the buy and the sell side? Anybody want to jump in?
I'll jump in. I mean, it's just like any other time Nielsen changes their measurement methodology. We went through it with RPD. We went through it with those of us that have been around a while, LPM, household meters, all of that. So Nielsen still they haven't definitively decided how they're going to include broadband only homes for next year. So there's really nothing we can be doing at this point until we know what that looks like. But for us, we're on impressions. And while there are cases where impressions will go down when you add in broadband only homes, my thought process is if it's more accurate, that's what I want. If it goes down or it goes up, I don't care. I just want it more accurate. So we are chomping at the bit for the final call on how those homes get added. And, it's fortunately only July. We're not buying 2021 yet. And we'll just take it into account just like we do every other currency change.
Yeah, and to that point, we have a process in place with every time there is a change in currency, we do a full-fledged analysis that takes several months as how it affects every single market and what it does to every single demo. And we'll do the same thing in this case. And of course, when it comes to impressions and then more importantly, pay for performance, we'll continue to have to monitor it on a daily, weekly basis to make sure we're getting the accurate delivery. And finally, we're just going to have to be conservative right out of the gate because chances are the ratings will go down a little bit, maybe not, but we're going to have to be a little bit more conservative, but knowing that from a pay for performance, we'll get everything we need at the end of the day.
Okay. So we have another question.
I want to just say something about that.
Sure.
Undeniably, Nielsen has certain issues about accuracy in their measurement. And every time they change and put a new part of the measurement system in, it's like building Frankenstein's monster, because the errors magnify each other. And if broadband only homes are put into the sample in an incorrect way, Steve Lanzano and TVB and a lot of other people that are working with Nielsen on trying to understand what they're planning to do with the broadband only homes. It's a really important decision, and we are waiting for it. But the waiting that happens sometimes with Nielsen is very unfortunate because it really distorts accuracy. So Kathy and Heather both are saying they want it to be accurate. Well, if you weight something incorrectly, or you have a certain kind of home that's weighted incorrectly, it can really throw a sample into a terrible situation. And now with COVID and not being able to get in and really upgrade the samples in some of these markets, that it's really falling apart. The idea of adding broadband only homes in is terrifying. So one of the things we have to do from both seller and buyer side is when we negotiate a deal and we start to talk about business rules, we have to have business rules that'll apply to change, and that's very hard. We don't know what the change is going to be. So I urge, and Nielsen has been, I think, vocal about saying they will attempt to do it the right thing. It's kind of like, there's a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. So
Right.
if they do it right, I'll be very happy. But if they don't, we're going to have a big, big problem, especially on impression-based pay for performance buys.
So we have another question from Matt Siegel. He says, local NSM here. With Nielsen changing its methodology, how do we safeguard against major rating swings in a pay-per-performance model? So, anything else?
That's exactly what I was just talking about.
Yeah, I think we answered that.
Okay. So then Frank Friedman is asking again, how are automated platforms like Hudson MX changing the workflow for buy sell side?
I mean, for us on the buy side, it is taking that lower value work out of the system and allowing buyers and assistants to spend more time doing higher value work that sets us apart from the competition. So that's really the nut of it for us.
Yeah, we did an analysis on hours prior to Hudson that it would take a buyer to do an overall campaign, and it went somewhere down from 23 hours down to 5 hours. I think the fact that everything is automated and gets back within minutes, and also it takes out the conversation of estimating numbers to ad nauseum, which we all can attest to, takes a very long time. That is really giving the buyers more opportunity to have the conversations with the stations, to negotiate with the stations, to get the proposals, to really know what's going on in the market, and to do the best thing for the client.
Yeah, sorry, if I could just add on, it also unlocks for us the ability to apply data to local buys. And we could not do that manually in 210 markets with a multitude of clients, with a multitude of high value audiences. It has to be automated. And the platforms are the only way we're ever going to be able to get that done. So that's huge potential.
And I wanted to add on the sell side, I think you're just starting to see the benefits of it, because we've been working very tightly with Hudson to move that negotiation so it can be electronically tracked, so we can actually see the negotiation piece coming through. We're adding pieces for our sellers so that we can make sure what actually goes to order matches what was negotiated. We're setting up rules to automatically set the priority code levels, et cetera, so the spot placement engine works properly for everything as well. So I think getting the systems to talk to one another and remove that friction, I think it's going to get better over time.
Okay. What do you think, Frank?
I think it's getting better. We've had some, not just Hudson, all the different automation efforts people are making are all steps in the right direction. Some of the early buys that I saw were crazy, that people would, the machine spit out things that were impossible, but that's a fine tuning that takes place over time. If it leads us to a automated system with human oversight, it's a perfect world. Mm-hmm. But if it's automation without market intelligence and other things that we pay people to do, it won't work. So,
And I think what he's saying is dead on. It's, so this sort of past programmatic, like everything's just going to be almost, you know, like it was in digital. You throw it out there, except this isn't going to work for the sell side and broadcast. But for us, for example, you know, we built our buy side aggregator. So any aggregator, we've worked with Hudson and, you know, of course, some of the others. You can bring the RFP in, see it immediately, alert the salesperson you have an RFP, so that that's all automated, and then also providing intelligence. So to the sales side, it's really about doing two things. It's about speeding prospect to cash and moving that forward, but also giving the corporate, you know, corporate level and the manager levels really insight into the behaviors that you can see that's occurring on the AE level, so that you also can manage your organization.
We have an anonymous attendee asking a question for the buyers. How do you see over the top playing into your local campaigns this year and into 2021? How do you differentiate between vendors and how are you activating on it?
And I think overall OTT and linear television has come to be just video. And I think most agencies that I'm aware of have started to adapt that model moving forward. From my experience, we see video as just video. So if a make good comes in on a linear campaign, we can look at options for OTT. If a plan comes down, now they come down with OTT as pretty much a day part. However, it's up to the buyer's discretion to move it from linear television to OTT should it make sense. Right now, we currently have it set up that we have two separate departments, even though there are market specialists. I see that evolving and merging into 2021. We might have them be just one department overall, but we work so closely together, it's as if we're doing it already.
yeah, we've moved our two departments together. One person sells both.
Cool. Well, Frank, there's a message from Joe Cerrone who says that he hasn't been approached on pay-per performance. He wants somebody to.
He'll get a call right away.
So there's another anonymous question. There was earlier mention of 2021 being down 10%. Is that due to overall brand spend being down or due to a shift in budget to other mediums?
I'd say predominantly overall. I mean, local is going to be down a little bit more than others, but I think overall will be down.
So, but is there going to be a shift from budget to other mediums, do you think? Is that part of the reason?
I don't see it as a shift. I see everything's going to be down, but local will probably be a little bit more down than others, unless we really can get clients to sign in on this geography and flexibility being the most important things right now, and can move more back into local.
We have a question.
I don't think there's.
You can tell Joe Cerrone I just sent somebody to call.
I'm sorry, did somebody else want to respond?
No, I was just agreeing with Kathy regarding the 10%. I don't see people or clients necessarily going to other forms of media, except if there's a transition from local linear to more digital. That's the only area that I really see some of that happening. Otherwise, I just think it's going to be a factor of advertising budgets being down.
Okay. Randy Weingard says, Frank is correct. A multi-billion-dollar industry using turn-of-the-century avail systems and technology is very counterproductive. Do we see a technology investment to make the selling ecosystem more efficient?
I hope that you're seeing investments from the vendors. Certainly, Vidya tried and wasn't successful. We all want to make it easier to buy and sell. It's a waste of people's times to be swivel chairing from application to application and doing all of the rekeying because none of the data matches and everything else. So yes, there is certainly, I think from the vendor's perspective, we're making investments to make this better. We hope to do it hand in hand with our customers and with the buy side so that we're actually adding value. There was, it's like, we are a for-profit vendor. We want to make money. We don't deserve money until we add value. And we got to make sure that we're building things that people actually want and that it is actually helping the industry. So yes, we need to continue investing across the board to streamline this business.
The investment doesn't necessarily have to be dollars, in the sense like we're investing the dollars, but you do need to find those clients, which, you know, we are, where they are providing you with a really help with that underlying knowledge. Not that we don't have knowledge, but being in their day-to-day, being able to actually sit with the manager or sit with an AE and go through workflows is going to help make that automation for tomorrow better.
We are at the 2 p.m. mark. I'm not sure how strict we need to be in terms of the length of this webinar. Kathy, what's your perspective? Can we go a little bit if our panelists can stick
Up
around?
to our speakers, I think if you want to stick around, I don't know if they have time commitments that make them get on a boat like Kathy.
I actually have a very important Nielsen meeting to
Yes,
get
no.
on, so
I actually have a meeting as well.
So we'll need to wrap up then. Jen.
Okay, well, listen, I am so sorry we couldn't get to everybody's questions. I had a ton more that I wanted to ask myself. It's really been fascinating. And I so appreciate the time that all of our panelists took to give us some insights. Frank Comerford from NBC, Will Offerman from Wide Orbit, Mark Gorman from Matrix, Kathy Doyle, and Heather Gundry. Thank you so much, guys. Very much, and I hope maybe sometime we can do this again, because this is a moving target, this whole world that we're talking about. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye now.